This is the Dery Brothers Tribecast, a podcast for diehard Cleveland Indians fans. Presented to you by WaitingForNextYear.com. Now, here are the hosts, Matt and Todd Dery.
All right, here we are, everybody. It is another edition, in fact, of the Dery Brothers Tribecast, brought to you by our friends at WaitingForNextYear.com and the Center for Advanced Dentistry. Matt and Todd with you on a late April, I don't even know what day it is, Wednesday afternoon. It's snowing in Michigan. What's it doing back in Seatown?
It's freezing. I think when we got the puppy, it was going to be a great idea because it's like, oh yeah, the weather's good, but it's friggin' 36 degrees outside and cloudy. I mean, it's miserable.
These Wednesdays are rough.
Yes,
congrats on the dog, by the way. If you listen to the last show we did, I don't even remember when we recorded it, but you did say you were going to get a dog. Take us through that sequence. I feel like I'm one of those reporters. I feel like I'm one of those reporters at a Greg Popovich press conference. Talk about. Is there a question there? But
talk to us about yes. We got her on Saturday. We drove to Johnstown, Ohio, which is just north and east of Columbus. Did a stop at Raising Cane's for some chicken fingers.
Oh, yes, sir.
Which, by the way, did a nice job in their drive-through. I, of course, was mask and gloves, but they had like a nice divider. Everyone had mask and gloves in there. We wiped down the food. What's nice is it comes in foam containers, so you just wipe down the bottom, and we ate in the car. Obviously,
how was the chicken?
The chicken was great. I mean, I know there's a couple here in Cleveland that have opened, nowhere close to me, but there's one in Brooklyn, and I think there's one on the west side. But it's A+, and that dipping sauce is it's the tops, as Mel Torme once said. Yeah.
Let's have this discussion. Hold on a second. So, Raising Cane's chicken, very, very solid, you said. Obviously, Chick-fil-A is fantastic, although you're talking about strips. Bojangles is considered a very good one down in the South. I had it at the Charlotte airport. I was not blown away.
Zaxby's?
That's
the other big one.
Zaxby's I've had in Indy. I mean, it's fine. It's not great.
Wait, they have Zaxby's in Indy?
They do. Michigan and 86th. Uh-huh.
Oh, I didn't know that because I knew it's down south, but you see the ads for Zaxby's during the SEC football games all the time, and I didn't know it existed because I don't go down south very often for various reasons, but
they love you. They love your boy down there.
Here's the thing. I think what made it so great. First of all, it was really hot. It was good. The dipping sauce really made it even that much better. Also, crinkle fries, which I'm a big fan of.
Oh, the crinkle cut? There you go.
Yeah, underrated crinkle cut fries. I still think if you give me a choice of anything, I got to go Chick-fil-A nuggets with Polynesian sauce.
Oh, they're fantastic. They really are.
I think that is still number one ahead of
that Popeye's chicken sandwich I have had is pretty darn good though. But I don't remember loving the strips and making it an appointment to go to a Popeye's to get strips. I will say that. I'm with you on Chick-fil-A.
I've eaten Popeye's chicken one time in my life. We were stuck at the Atlanta airport when the kids were really little. For like 5 hours, we were flying through, when we got delayed. I don't even remember where we were coming from, but, I hadn't had fried chicken in God knows how long. And the missus was like, you know what? Let's get some Popeye's fried chicken. Why not? Like, who cares? I'm like, you know what?
There you go.
And it was awesome. You remember when we were kids, Dad used to get KFC all the time on Mayfield Road.
Did he?
What are you talking about? How do you not remember this? Dad used to get buckets of extra crispy chicken.
Oh, yeah. But that was a rare, but then not that. We used to always have pizza on Sunday night.
No, but Dad would get fried chicken from KFC when it was Kentucky Fried Chicken on Mayfield Road. And I remember he used to get those little bucket parfait desserts. Remember the chocolate cream?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That was so good.
Those were solid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everybody said Bojangles was so great. I'm glad you like the Raising Cane's. I think that's good.
Yeah, I would like one to get closer. I mean, how about bring one over to the Pinecrest area for me? Huh?
Jeez.
Come on.
What about now? We just got Nashville hot chicken strips from KFC the other night, actually. My wife was like, this is what I want right now. I'm like, are you serious? And I mean, hey, to leave the house to go to a drive-thru, I was in, so I went.
It's funny because we were literally just discussing, friends of ours the other night, the great Dr. Borland, Dr. and Mrs. Borland, there's a Hungarian restaurant in Shaker Square. So if people don't know, there's a Hungarian restaurant that our grandfather, who was Hungarian, used to take our father and his brothers. They used to go to this place. Uncle Kenny I told Uncle Kenny that we went there a couple years ago and he was dying. It's called Balaton, Balaton. So me and like 5 friends went there one night just like for fun. They're like, you know what, let's do this. It was like a Tuesday night, Shaker Square. There was no one in the restaurant. It's like authentic Hungarian food, like paprikash, goulash. And they give you so much food. You've never seen so much food. And it was so good. Well, support your local business.
Sure.
The Borland's got it. They deliver within 5 minutes. And we asked them how it was, and they said it was unbelievable. They wrote him a handwritten note. Thank you so much for supporting us. Gave him free dessert. He said they literally had so much food it lasted 3 meals. So I'm thinking, Leah's never had it before. And we're like, you know what? Let's do it. Who cares? So what if it's a 25-minute drive in each direction?
Right.
Like you said, who cares? We're dying for activity here. I'm going to drive to Balaton one night coming up in the next week or so and get me some Hungarian goulash, baby. Some chicken paprikash. Let's go.
That's the way to do it. I love it. Yes. I'm looking this up right now on Uprocks, Yeah. I'm trying to maneuver this. Carl's Jr.'s chicken tenders came in second.
You're talking garbage food. That is terrible.
How about that?
Well, that's terrible.
Raising Cane's number 1, Carl's Jr. number 2. On this one, KFC. I'm looking at some of the other ones here. Popeyes, Chick-fil-A came in 5th. I mean, come on.
Well, that's a joke. I'm sorry. You put Chick-fil-A 5th on any list, and the list doesn't count. I mean, it's like when the Indians had the bracket of favorite Indians players in the 90s, and Jose Mesa was a 2 seed. I immediately dismissed it because anybody who would put Jose Mesa as a 2 seed, you can't take that person seriously.
We're talking about chicken, and we're going to get to your dog in a second.
Speaking of chickens,
it always reminds me of when people used to call up when I worked at WDFN, and we would be talking about anything other than sports, guy talk or whatever, and people would call up and go, "Yeah, I thought this was a sports station." Thought this was a Tribe podcast. We're talking about Raising Cane's. What about Jack in the Box?
Come on, you're talking garbage food right now.
I'm just telling you they're on this list.
Jack in the Box, that's terrible. Listen.
So you're on your way to Columbus.
We've done. Oh, we're back on the dog. Okay, I didn't know we were still talking about the dog.
We can't do chicken all dog show.
Yada yada. We picked up the dog, mask and gloves. The dog was very cute. One person came out and basically delivered the dog to us. The kids were thrilled. It was great. She has been great so far. Only one night she has gotten up in the middle of the night. The next, so we've had her. We're taping this on Wednesday. Taping, I said. Sorry, we're recording this on Wednesday. No one uses tape anymore. Speaking of tape, the kids have no idea. I showed them. We watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off with the kids last night.
Nice.
Which they loved. There's a scene obviously in the movie where Dean of Students Edward Rooney comes and he presses the doorbell to talk to Ferris, and a cassette tape starts to play.
Correct.
And Brooke looks at me and she's like, "What is that?"
That's a cassingle. You should tell her that's a cassingle.
That's right. Yeah, so it was pretty funny.
I think the Ralph Tresvant sensitivity cassingle is still in my closet at Mom's house.
We wore that thing out.
What a great song!
That song is so great.
Did you watch that Prince show last night?
Okay, so I recorded it because we watched Ferris, and the great Mark P said it was not great, and he's a huge Prince guy, and he's also a music snob, and I trust his judgment. Did you think it was good?
We watched it. It wasn't bad. I mean, Beck doing a Prince song was an embarrassment. Who's my guy that was at Beej's wedding? Dave Grohl.
Dave Grohl.
He was all right. But like Morris Day, I mean, that guy's a fucking man. I'm sorry. He's still the man. Morris Day in the time. I mean, Morris Day.
There with the cape?
Of course.
Oh, it's so good.
And the mirror.
Oh, all right. Well, I'll watch just for that.
Yeah, no, it was pretty decent. It was pretty decent.
Yeah, I'll give it a look. We're trying to come up with different activity. I just finished my first 500-piece puzzle yesterday.
Is it the Kansas one?
No, that one's coming up next. I was mid the KU Allen Fieldhouse 1,000-piece puzzle will be started today.
Very cool. Very nice.
Yes.
All right, so you said she. Tell everybody the name of the dog.
Yes, Coco, after Coco Crisp and the coronavirus. That's the name of the dog. And ironically, last night on STO, they played Game 3 of the 2016 ALDS, where Coco, and I will never forget this, Coco Crisp came up, and the score was 1-0, I believe, at the time. And I don't remember what the score was, but I know the Indians were only up by like a run. And the Red Sox had brought in Drew Pomerantz, the left-hander, former Tribe first-round pick Drew Pomerantz, might I add, to turn Coco around to the right side. And I tweeted, "Why are you not pinch hitting for Coco? He can't hit from the right side." Remember how awful he was right-handed? His splits.
Not in the playoffs. He wasn't.
Yeah, he crushed a homer over the monster. And it was funny because they also STO put in their Instagram feed a post-game interview, Sam Ryan with Coco on the field.
Nice.
And he was like, he just kept referring to these kids on the Indians and this group. And, he had only been on the team since the end of August. So really he had been on the team for 6 weeks. But you forget, first of all, the guy was absolute nails in the playoffs. He
was great.
He had the only RBI in Game 5 in the 1-0 win, the Tomlin game in the World Series. So that was Game 4 or Game 3. I think it was Game 3 actually. They won 1-0. He had the only RBI single. He homered in the Red Sox series, and he homered in the Toronto series, and he had another big RBI. The guy was absolutely nails. And what's sad is Game 7 of the World Series for him, the only reason he was taken out of that game was because late in I don't remember what inning it was, but it was late in the game, and Dexter Fowler stole second base, and Yan Gomes, who was in the game because Roberto Perez had been pinch run for with Naquin. Yan, who, God bless him, he was terrible in the playoffs that year. He'd been injured.
Yeah, he was shot. He was shot.
But he airmailed a throw into center field, which allowed Dexter Fowler to get to third. Tito then countered by taking Coco out of the game.
Correct.
And putting Michael Martinez in the game, which we all know ended up coming back around. And Michael Martinez made the last out, which you and I saw the ball hit the bat, and then we turned around and walked off.
Correct. Still to this day, have never seen it on television.
I told the kids that the other night because Game 7 was on MLB Network over the weekend, and I saw when it was on. I was scrolling through the thing, and I happened to see. I was like, okay, I think it's probably going to be like late innings at this time. I turned it on, and it was the 8th inning. So I watched the 8th inning. Because obviously that's
fine. That's fine. Yeah, sure.
And then I shut it off. And to this day, I've never seen, other than when you and I were there, I've never seen anything after Jan's absolute atrocious at bat after Coco singled after the Rajay homer in the 8th. I won't watch it. I won't. I just won't do it.
It's interesting because Davis hits the homer, and pandemonium, and you're jumping on me, and the whole thing. And then you're right, like Coco, the crowd's going so crazy, and then Crisp just crushes a single to left. I mean, it was hard hit.
Right-handed, by the way.
Right-handed. Like, Russell didn't even move, okay, in the hole. Like, it was just smoked. And it's like, oh my God, like, it's still going. Like, usually it's like, all right, you tie the game, the biggest home run in, like, Indians history, and then whatever, a guy pops out and we go crazy and we go to the ninth inning or whatever. Like, Coco kept it going. So, like, that feeling of even the single, it's like, just pile it on. Like, here comes Jan. It's like, dude, like, Jan hadn't had a hit since probably that last meaningless game in Kansas City in the regular season. I mean, he just, he was injured, came back, and was basically a backup catcher to Roberto. And, oh, God, just, it's so frustrating.
It said, I was watching it and said he was 0 for 3 in the World Series to that point. I don't know if it was 0 for 3 in the World Series or if it was 0 for 3.
He never played. He never played in the playoffs.
No,
not much.
Roberto was so good.
He was incredible. Oh yeah.
And he was a superior defensive catcher, as we all know. But he was 0 for 3, and it was like all 3 at bats were against Chapman, and he was 0 for 3 with 1 strikeout entering that at bat. And the first 2 pitches were nowhere close to the zone.
Right. Oh yeah.
And Smoltz was like, he's totally gassed. He's got nothing. And I remember thinking, I'm telling you, I can vividly remember thinking, don't swing, take a strike, make him throw a strike, please.
Right.
And the 3rd pitch was in the dirt, and he swung. And the 4th pitch was in the dirt, and he swung. And the 5th pitch was also wide of the zone. He checked his swing and couldn't hold it up. And Coco had stolen second, and the throw got into center field, but he had struck out. And I haven't seen what's happened ever since. Should we go? Yeah. Not since we're on the topic of Game 7.
Yeah.
And now we're actually talking baseball. Should we go back to the Game 6 and Game 7 and tell those stories?
Well, I mean, you brought it up the other day via text. I don't know, who was it with? Was it with Seth?
I believe it was, because I don't think he knew. I don't know. I don't know who it was, but it was someone who didn't know the story. It had to have been Seth because Jeremy obviously knows.
Yeah. But I mean, game 6.
Let's go back. Let's go back to Game 6.
Yeah, Game 6 was a disaster from the beginning, and then.
So wait, hold on. Let me go back to the beginning. No, I know who we were texting with. It was Andrew Siciliano. That's who it was because I saw Andrew. Andrew came and met me. Okay, so before Game 6.
Oh, hold on. By the way, I had Andrew on my Lions show yesterday. So I had him on the phone, and I go, hey, great text thread with Todd the other day. And Andrew, and it's only Andrew can do in his snarky way that he talks, goes, and here's how, Andrew's got the deep voice now, and he's like, nobody keeps a text thread going like your brother. Oh, my God.
I was so bored.
He's like, would it ever end? I'm like, I was laughing.
He never, first of all, he never responds to anything.
Rarely.
He started it, and then he just went, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, so here's the deal.
I brought up his feud with the late Chet Kopic. He didn't even respond.
Right, exactly.
Come on.
He's not. Listen, he's too busy for us. He's big time. He's an NFL guy.
Listen, I mean,
this week.
And by the way, there's only so many cameras that the NFL Network can set up remotely at people's homes based on, and he got one of those cameras, so he's on call all the time. He's got a camera in his house, and when they tell him you're on, and he just has to go on. Yesterday, he and I were supposed to record Locked On Lions and do a segment for my podcast at 5 yesterday, but then the Gronk trade happened. So at 5:03, I'm like, where are you? And he's like, I'm still on the air. It's breaking news. I have to stay. Yeah. So I went upstairs.
He's like their main host.
Yeah.
Right?
So I went up.
Main NFL Network host.
Yep. So I went upstairs, had a pre-dinner drink with my wife, and then he called me at 5:45. He's like, let's go. So
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So Game 6 of the World Series. So before each home playoff game, because it worked for Game 1, did I take you? No, because it was a 4:00 start. I went to this restaurant on, it's no longer there. It was called 811. Does that sound right to you?
I don't know.
Okay, so there was a restaurant that was open for like 2 years, and it was right on Prospect. I think it was called 811, and the address was 811 Prospect. It was a Brad Friedlander restaurant. Your boy Brett was running it for a while because Jeremy and I went there before Chris Rock, and it was about to close, and Brett was running it. Anyways, and your former camper, I'm talking about.
Yeah, so I was his camp counselor.
Yeah, so we went to 8-11 before almost every game. It was either before or after every game I was at that restaurant. It was like a good luck charm, so we kept going. So I was there before the game, and I'm like, hey, I got a table for like 8. I told everyone, it was before game 6. I was like, we're going to win the World Series, man. I'm pretty sure it was a Sunday night. I don't know. I think it was a weekend night for sure, but like Dave and Greg and Rafael all came in for it. And Siciliano and his brother were there. I went to the game with Jeremy Bilski. He and I were there. We had a million people just coming in and out. A couple of my other college buddies, just everyone was there. And the vibe before Game 6, I just was like, this is it, man. We're going to win the fucking World Series tonight. This city's going to be up for grabs. The weather was good. It just felt so
warm. It was
great.
It was so warm for those 2 nights. It really was. It was unseasonably balmy.
We were in t-shirts. I think we were t-shirts and shorts. I mean, it was that warm. Or t-shirt and jeans at worst. So we get into the stadium, and then everyone can remember. I believe it was the third batter of the game was Chris Bryant, and he absolutely destroyed. So, before we go any further, we sit down, and this was now games 1 and 2 of the World Series. There were not that many Cubs fans. I come down to our seats for Game 6. I wasn't at Game 2. I was only at Game 1. I come down to our seats for Game 6, and four guys directly behind us. It was a guy, his father, his grandfather, who was like 90 years old, and his brother, and then another couple of Cubs fans over my right shoulder, over my left shoulder, and I remember turning to Jeremy Bilski and was like, holy shit, this is ridiculous how many Cubs fans
we've been invaded.
Yeah. So, I mean, the guy behind us couldn't have been nicer. Randomly, he lived on the same street as my boss in Chicago. Like, we had all these, couldn't have been nicer. And he was like, talking about his grandfather in 93, a big Cubs fan. It was cool, right? So, Chris Bryant crushes that home run off. It was Tomlin for Game 6.
Correct.
And it was like, the first time
he had nothing. He had nothing. Right. He had nothing that
time
day.
They saw it, I just remember saying to Jeremy on the way to the game, like, my biggest worry is they've seen Tomlin already. Now, in Toronto hadn't seen him and Boston hadn't seen him, and they only had to see him once. Now that these guys have seen him, and I'm worried they won't fool him. Chris Bryant hit that home run 10,000 feet, and the guy behind me erupted. Now, it's the same reaction I would have had I been in Game 6 and, Carlos hits a homer and I was at Wrigley. I would have had the same reaction. So he wasn't an asshole. He was just cheering for his team. So it was cool. Then I can't remember who else gets on base, but then there's 2 outs and 2 on, and the infamous play happens. And there's a pop-up between just short right, short center, and Naquin comes in, and I'm looking, and I'm waiting for Naquin to make the play, and he's looking at Lonnie, and Lonnie's looking at him, and the ball drops.
Oh.
And I remember that ball dropped, and I sunk my head into my hands like, oh my God. And I started to have literally had a panic attack, and I screamed at the top of my lungs, Naquin, you fucking idiot! It's Game 7 of the World Series, god damn it! And everyone looked at me like I was nuts, and I was like, I turned to Jeremy, I was like, I gotta get out of here. I can't be here. I gotta get out of here. And they had taken away our aisle.
I know, so you're like trudging over people.
I'm in the middle
we
of
were
the
trapped. We were trapped.
9 people, and I go up, and I go to the aisle, and I pick up the phone. So I get my phone, and I'll let you pick it up from here.
Well, no, I don't know when I know you called me, but I didn't know where you were calling me from.
So I called you.
No, I know, but where did you go? You went up to the concourse.
Oh, I walked up to the concourse, and there was no one in the concourse except for me.
So now it's what? Now it's what? 4-0 or 5-0? It was.
What? No. It was only 3-0 because the grand slam in the second inning off of Otero from Addison Russell made it 7-0.
Got it. Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you called. No, you called, and I was like, "Hello," and you're like, you're all out of breath, and you're like, "I can't do this," and I was like. Can't do what? And I'm like, what's going on? Like, what's the matter? I really thought you were calling to say something happened with mom or there was like a real emergency. I mean, yeah, it's an emergency where, it's early in the game. It was pretty bad, but I didn't expect you to call.
Right. Well, when would I ever make a phone call from the stadium?
You're like, I can't do this. I can't do this. Or what? I don't remember the exact words, but you're like, I'm having a panic attack. And I was like, it's early. I was trying to talk you down. I was like, it's early. It's only 3 runs, blah, blah, blah. Are you okay? You're like, I can't do this. How does he not catch that ball? I'm like, you're right. It's the center fielder's ball. I'm like, well, I was trying to be positive. I was like, we'll get this back. We'll get it back. It's early. I don't know. I was just trying to calm you down. I kind of knew. I had a bad. Like you're sitting here saying we're winning this thing. I was like, are we really going to win 4 straight games? I had a bad. I did not have a good feeling for Game 6. I actually felt a little bit better for Game 7, but. When we went to Game 7 and went to dinner and everything, I think we should have gone in the entrance that we went to for Game 1 of the Boston series and Game 2 of the Toronto series. Because that was
a separate entrance because we were in the club.
Which was the entrance, yeah. We went in the center field entrance by the Tomey statue for Game 7. And I don't know, sometimes I think about maybe we should have done the same routine and walked all the way around.
No, I'm sure that would have made the difference. So getting back to Game 7. So, for the listeners, Matt lives in Michigan, and he had come in for 1 game for each series, and this was the World Series. At the time, you couldn't get out. You had told me it was a Monday. It was definitely a Monday because you had to get out of work. And
I had got out of work for Tuesday. We had some sort of weird half day at work, but it was in the parking lot at U of D Jesuit High School, about to go in. It was like 7:30 when you called me.
No. First of all, you're wrong.
Yeah, you called me in the morning.
I called you way earlier than that. I couldn't. It was
maybe 7.
Maybe I have it wrong, but
it was early.
The night of Game 6, I had the worst night of sleep. Like at that point, I just had the worst night of sleep I could ever remember having. And I'm tossing and turning, and Leah was supposed to go to games. The whole time, Leah was supposed to go to Game 7 with me because I was like, I can't deal with anybody else. I got to, you got to come with me to Game 7. I can't, the kids weren't ready for that. So Leah looked at me at like 6:30 in the morning, and she's like, Todd, I can't do this. She's like, I can't. I don't think I can do it. She's like, you need to call your brother. So I texted you, and I believe it was like 6:30 in the morning. I texted you, and I was just texting you, and I wrote, Matt, I need you. And your response was, I've been waiting all night for you to say that.
I don't even remember what I said. No, but I think we did. Oh, was it a text or phone call? Maybe it was a text.
It was so early in the morning. It was definitely a text. I wouldn't have called. Yeah.
Maybe I had pulled into the parking lot, and I called my wife and was like, I'm going,
Yeah. So you came in for Game 7. Did we go out beforehand? I don't remember. Like it's
for Game 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went to dinner with our uncles and Jeremy and.
Yeah, it was Jeremy, Steve, Uncle Keith. Yeah, and that random guy. Yeah, that's right.
It was a good meal. So solid.
It was a good meal. It was. We ate at Adega on in the 9. It was
correct.
It was really good, and I remember we walked across and saw the great Craig DeLindle on the street. Gave him a big hug.
Also ran into Billy Burns in his Cubs jersey. Bill is the SID at Loyola for basketball. Remember,
Tim Tagaris, a guy I knew from the college days, who
I just remember
a big-time Democratic operative.
I just remember
Cubs fan.
Democrat Party. I just remember driving in from Michigan on the turnpike, and I'm driving by, and all these people are speeding past me. I wasn't driving that fast, but like all these Illinois plates, the Cub flags, I'm like, what's going on here? Because Todd, you would warn me that there were a lot of fans. And then as we're walking to dinner, I saw Bill, and then we ran into your guy, and it's like, wow, there's a lot of Cub jerseys. But then you're right, when Fowler homered to lead the game off, I'm like, what is this? Like it was disgraceful. That environment, that atmosphere was the worst. It was the absolute worst. Other than Davis's homer, Coco's single, Kipnis scoring from second on the wild pitch, shades of Kenny in 95. Other than that night was awful. It was just gut-wrenching. It was that vibe, that scene, the screaming at the guys in front of us, the guy behind us. I mean, it was horrible. The whole night was horrible. People were like, oh man, you were at Game 7. You're a baseball guy though. Don't you have any about the Cubs? And I said, no. The whole thing was a disaster. My bladder is usually good. I can go without having to go to the bath. I probably had to go to the bathroom like 400 times that night. It was weird. The whole thing was weird. I can
tell you that I knew we were in trouble when we sat down in the seats and we were swarmed. It was like literally the two next to you on the left. The guy happened to be really cool.
He was cool.
The 8 guys, literally 8 to 10 behind us, over our left shoulder, over our right shoulder. And if you remember, then there was the Jag-offs in the first row, who had the entire first row had been overtaken by obnoxious North Shore dickheads who just
they were FaceTiming everybody like, hey, look where we are. It's like, sit down, watch the game. It was so bad.
Pitch.
So
and they
bad.
Were FaceTiming and standing up, and I remember, and I yelled, I'm like, it's Game 7 of the World Series, sit the fuck down. And the guy's like, relax, man, relax. And every 2 seconds with those Jag-offs, they're standing up, taunting us up and down with the drinks. It was
and
such amateur hour.
The woman behind me to the left was screaming at him later.
I thought she was right next to me on the right. Are you talking about the woman and her husband who were like fighting with them in front, and they were like,
they were.
You're gay. You're gay. Like, remember that whole thing?
Oh yeah.
Game 7 of the World Series.
And then he's right, and he's turning around saying, "You want to compare W2s?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, this is not going well." I'm literally almost in tears as an adult male, going, "Guys, can we just watch the game, please? Like, stop."
It's the biggest game of our lives, and it was getting ruined by
it was distracting. It was so distracting.
To say they were at Game 7, and
then you got heckled by some guy a couple rows behind us, a Cubs fan, because you yelled.
No. It was I got that one. So here's
I gave him the death stare.
No, there were 2 situations that I had.
This is so horrible.
If you recall, there was a family of 4 behind us. It was a woman who was way too attractive for her fat Slav husband. It was a woman who was way too attractive for her fat Slav husband, who was all dolled up and had clearly.
Oh, I remember her. I remember her now.
And there were 2 little kids who were probably, I'm going to go 6 and 8 at the most. And we were standing. It was Game 7. Everyone was standing. And the woman kept tapping me, going, my kids can't see. I can't see.
I remember that.
And I just kept ignoring and kept ignoring. And then finally, after about the 10th time, I was like, lady, it's Game 7 of the World Series. I have been sitting in these seats my entire life. And if I want to stand, I'm going to fucking stand. And if you don't like it, you can leave. And then the husband said to me, I'm sorry. Like, he looked at me. He was like,
he was on our side. Yeah.
Yeah, he totally got it. But it was like, I couldn't believe that I was being told to sit during game when the people in front of me were standing. So we had to stand, obviously. There was that one. And then there was, the one where, and I give you a ton of credit here because you remained so calm. Thank God I had you there because you were such a calming influence on me. When those Jag-offs in the front row, Chris Bryant, toasting and they turning around and taunting us, and finally I'd had enough and I just screamed, "You're fucking Jag-off, sit the fuck down. No one wants you standing up. Everyone hates you. Fuck you." And the guy's like, just own it, man. Just own it. I remember, and I was like, I'll own that we're getting our asses kicked. Why don't you own it? You're the biggest asshole in the stadium. Oh. And then I turned around, I was like, who? And you grabbed my leg, and you were like, it was the Costanza. Easy, big fella.
Yeah, I think. I mean, you were on your own, and you were fine, and I didn't. I don't think I opposed much of what you were doing, but it got to the point where it's like, all right, we can't get like beers thrown on us, or or fights, anything physical. I'm not getting kicked out of this thing.
I was worried that the guy was going to come back and punch me. I thought it could happen, but I knew.
What about the other guy that heckled you behind? That said that yelled at you. Why don't you get up and leave like you did last night?
Yeah,
that was the guy I death stared.
Yeah,
because you yelled something about something, and he yelled out, "Why don't you get up and leave like you did last night?" Or I was like, "Oh God!" I'm like, "We're getting it from all angles, man."
Yeah, it was no good.
Horrible.
I will say that the other funny part about those Jagoffs in row one was when Rajay hit his homer. I don't know if you saw that. You had to have seen this.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah.
After I jumped into your arms like a cheerleader jumping into the quarterback's arms, wrapping my legs around you, crying. There were two guys who jumped over the first row.
Oh yeah, and got right in their faces.
Jumped right in his face. It was unbelievable.
It was unbelievable. They were like, "How you like that? How you like that?" I was like, "Oh my God!"
They were like, "Fuck you!"
Oh yeah,
Fuck you.
It was unbelievable.
How that guy didn't swing at that dude, I'll never know. Never.
Oh, that was crazy.
So, yeah,
just a horror. It was horrific. It was horrific. Because I mean, everybody's like, oh, and I got out of working on Tuesday, so I stayed at your house and drove back and didn't have to work. My boss at the time, the principal of the school, is like, I totally get it. You're supposed to give me 48 hours notice, but this is Game 7 of the World Series, so go ahead. And he was cool about it. The great Tony Trudell, and I appreciated that. But my gosh, like, that's the whole thing. I mean, I'm really sorry you lost, or at least was it fun? I'm like, no. It was god awful. It was the single worst experience ever. Like dad dying, like all these things. I went through a pretty bad divorce and all sorts of stuff personally. We all have had it, but like that was really bad, like really bad. It wasn't even fun.
It wasn't fun. You're right. And I told so many people this, like truly, it was not fun. It was not fun at all. The only good thing was Rajay's homer and like getting into extra inning, when we thought that, we had all the momentum and, going into the bottom of the ninth, I would assume that I felt like, oh my God, we're going to walk it off and we're going to win the World Series on a walk off. And I'm sure I felt that way at the time, but yeah, it was not fun. It's the same thing. Sean and I went to, you got me the tickets when in 2008, when Kansas won the national title, they played Steph Curry and Davidson in the Elite Eight, and they were a 10 seed, and we were a 1 seed, and everybody in the building except for the Kansas fans was rooting for Davidson. And I remember we ended up winning at the end, and but they had a shot to
Curry did, yeah.
No, he passed it to Jason Richards.
That's right, yeah.
Passed it up. So I remember that game ended, and Sean and I felt just relief. Like we were both like, that wasn't fun. I'm relieved more than anything else.
That was pretty excruciating.
Yeah, it was like 59-57, low scoring. It wasn't fun. And we won and it wasn't fun. But this was way worse. And just brutal. But I can say that I always pictured me being in the building, with you or with Dad or, or maybe one day, God willing, with the kids and, the Indians winning the World Series. And I always pictured that I would have this unbelievable moment, and I really thought it was going to happen. When the truth is, it couldn't have been Rajay's homer, as I like to say, the greatest moment of my life, the all-time natural high that'll never be topped ever. Unless the Indians were to win the World Series on a walk-off homer in Game 7 one day. But it wasn't fun. You're right. You're so right. It just was not fun.
No. And there was a lot of drama, and it was a great series. You give guys like Tom Hamilton credit. When people talk about announcers, and there's so many cheesy homer, bought and paid for company guys that just sit on the lap of ownership When they do the games nowadays, Tom Hamilton's so real. I've heard his calls. I've heard even the final out and the things that he said afterwards. I've actually heard that more than I've actually seen it. And he's just said good things. Like he says stuff like, "What an amazing series," and what two great teams. And it was a shame one of them had to lose. Like he could have easily just gone, and said, like some guys would do a grounder to third, or That's what makes Tom Hamilton so good, man. He gives the other team some love. When somebody else's outfielder Jackie Bradley Jr. robs Lindor of a home run, like he'll get excited for the other team. That's what makes Tom so good.
He does for his own team.
That's what makes him so good. You could tell because I've heard his Rajay call thousands of times. I mean, I watch the home run pretty much every day. Sometimes I go. It depends. You go Joe Buck. You can go to Vasgersian. Or you could play the Hamilton one.
This is where I was going.
And Hamilton, but you could tell Tom's voice was, you're talking November. I mean, his voice by then is getting pretty hoarse. It's a lot of games to be calling.
I was just going to ask you. My next question for you is, I think it was either Saturday or Sunday. I was up early and I went to the office and I turned on the TV and I went to the YouTube app. And I pulled up the Rajay homer. Now, I watched all 3 calls of Rajay's homer. And now, they're all 3 pretty good. I would say Joe Buck's is I'm not going to say the worst because it wasn't bad. His was the worst of the 3 to me. Tommy's call, he let it breathe after it was gone.
Oh, yeah.
You can hear and then he came back and he was like,
you should see.
The describe. Right.
No, I know the whole thing by heart.
You could hear in his voice.
Oh, yeah.
That he was emotional. Like, he was trying to hold it in. You could tell he had the same feeling I had. I cried, as you know. I cried in your arms.
Yeah, no, there was, he did do a long pause, and then he says, "You should see the mob scene coming out of the Indians' third base dugout." Yeah. Rajay Davis. I mean, it was like
a bullet down the left field line.
Oh, yeah.
You could hear it in his voice, like he was crying. But the ultimate call to me, still to this day, is the international call of Matt Vasgersian.
It's awesome. I mean, people probably don't even know it exists. It's incredible.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I don't know when I found that call. It was within the first year. But when I found it, and for those who haven't, if you can look it up, it's on YouTube. I've watched it 8 million times. His call is so great. He's got no dog in the fight, obviously, but he is so excited by the magnitude of the moment. And he let out the famous Santa Maria at the end. And I love it. It's so good. And same thing. He let it breathe too. God, why couldn't we have won that?
I know.
Oh, I mean, can you imagine, by the way, we win that game? Imagine what Rajay Davis would be in this city.
Oh, he'd move.
We lost.
Right. He'd live there and never pay for a meal or a drink or, dry cleaning, nothing for the rest of his life.
It's incredible. I mean, you think of like those moments, like you and I were in the stadium in January of 1987, the 86 AFC title game, when Brian Brennan made the catch and shook Dennis Smith and ran in for the touchdown to put us up 7 with 4 minutes to go. And you and I jumping up and down and saying, "We're going to the Super Bowl. We're going to the Super Bowl." And that was back when the Browns were the Browns and we really cared and it was amazing. Like, kids don't know who Brian Brennan is here.
No,
they have no idea.
It's too bad.
Right?
It's too bad.
Brian Brennan would be, again, one of the great moments in Browns history, and it's totally forgotten.
You're right.
And
exactly.
overshadowed because,
that stadium was shaking. Like it felt like it was going to collapse when Brennan zigzagged around that dude into the end zone. That was pretty special.
It's nuts, by the way. I was 10 and you were 13, which is the age of my 2 children. Think about that. You want to feel old.
Yeah. That's
Think
wild.
about that for a minute.
Oh, man. I need a cigarette after that.
Get yourself a drink.
Oh, that's good stuff. I mean, you told me, you reminded me that today was Tito's birthday. How old is he? 61?
Yeah. 61, yeah.
saw his he's doing the cameo thing now for $75.
I think to tell you how bored these guys are. I'll tell you what, that's a good bargain when you see some of the other people that are $75.
Give me an example.
I don't know. I mean, I know that I got my Adam Barta for $25 from Jeremy last year. That was pretty good. No, but I it's interesting, and this will have to be a topic for another time because I'm sure
I got to wrap up.
The amount of people that don't like Tito as a manager on Twitter is like astounding. I mean, that's how it always is. No, I mean, do I think he's the perfect manager? Of course not. And there's definitely some things about him that, his in-game, his strategy wise that I don't agree with. Obviously, the guy loves bunting, and I think it's absolutely drives me insane. But I mean, he's like Phil Jackson level of managing egos in the locker room. I mean, imagine what he would have been able to do with the '95 Indians. I mean, you hear those interviews about Hargrove, like Kenny Lofton and David Justice saying, we didn't even listen to the guy, like we laughed at him, like I mean, yeah.
But Hargrove was like a bit of a legend based on the fact he played on some bad teams. He had some decent, success and all this other stuff, and I mean, I think that's
a great person, absolute Hall of Fame person for sure.
Right. So. Oh man! All right, brother. Well, it was that was fun.
Yeah. Hey, let's relive some more sports moments where our team lost.
All right. Well, there it is. Another.
Should we talk about Dad's funeral while we're at it?
Stops. Jesus. Oh man. And on that note.
Come on! I'm just trying to win.
I know. All right. So this is the final it's not the last installment. Now you flustered me. All right, we'll do another one in the next couple weeks. Hopefully there's some news.
Hey, we gotta do it because we were named top 25 must listen to podcasts in Cleveland by Cleveland.com last week.
When Mom said, "Hey, you're in the Plain Dealer."
Tell them the story. All
right, real fast, but she texts us and she goes, "You're in the Plain Dealer." I'm reading the Cleveland Magazine section, and lo and behold, there we were. We looked it up and found it. We got a little waiting for next year. Boys got some love, and they said the Dery Brothers. I thought it was funny.
I mean, the fact that the Cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer. I mean, Patty's one of the few people who still gets an actual newspaper. So she's trying to do her best to keep journalism alive here in Cleveland.
That's right.
God bless that woman.
All right, buddy. Good stuff.
All right, you're the best.
There it is, the Dery Brothers Tribecast, another storytelling edition here on this April 22nd. We'll talk to you guys soon.